human rights, but also to say, okay, what...
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump says India will buy Venezuelan oil as opposed to purchasing oil from Iran. He says, we've already made that deal, the concept of the deal. Days after threatening tariffs on any country supplying Cuba with oil, Trump says he believes the US would work a deal on Cuba. Donald Trump has also posted on Truth Social that he has ordered the Department of Homeland Security to under no circumstances get involved with protests in democratic-led cities unless they ask for federal help or federal property is threatened. Protests break out against Trump across the United States, with protesters denouncing Trump and ICE from San Francisco to Minneapolis. President Zelensky says the Ukraine was waiting for more information from the United States about further peace talks and expected new meetings to take place next week. The Iranian Army's Commander-in-Chief Amir Hatami said that the armed forces were ready to defend the Islamic Republic until the end amid aggressive posturing by the United States and allies. India convenes the budget session of its parliament, with Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said to present her 9th union budget. Stock markets to remain open on a Sunday due to the budget session for the first time in Indian history. South Korea signs contract with Norway to supply the Chunmoo multiple launch rocket system valued at $896.4 million. South Korean presidential chief staff said after meeting Norwegian defense minister. All right, we start with some breaking news. Now, US President Donald Trump has claimed that India will buy oil from Venezuela instead of purchasing crude from Iran. He asserted that an agreement on the arrangement is already in place. Speaking to reporters about Air Force One en route Florida, Trump said Washington has already made that deal and welcomed China to enter into a similar oil purchase arrangement with the United States. The comments came as the United States signals to New Delhi that it could soon resume Venezuelan oil exports to help replace Russian crude imports, part of Washington's wider effort to reshape global energy supply and limit revenue funding Russia's war in Ukraine. There was no immediate official response from New Delhi to Trump's claim, even as the broader energy and diplomatic implications of the statement are still emerging. And we now move on. Viewers, US President Donald Trump has also stated that Iran is seriously engaging in negotiations with the United States, marking a significant shift in the diplomatic landscape between the two nations. Trump expressed hope that these talks would lead to an agreement that is acceptable to both sides, suggesting a potential breakthrough in the long-standing tension over Iran's nuclear program and regional policies. The US has long demanded that Iran curb its missile development and nuclear activities as part of any new deal, while Tehran has rejected such conditions. Collins Chong-Yu-Keat, Foreign Affairs, Security and Strategy Analyst from Kuala Lumpur, joins me in this discussion. Collins, thanks very much for joining us. Trump says Iran wants to make a deal, seriously engaging in talks. How much can we take his statements at face value?
Yes, we have seen the sustained pressure, the saber-rattling moves by the Trump administration, and this is it's a classic escalate to de-escalate strategy and to push Iran and to seek for a deal. And this has been ongoing now for the past years, since the attack last year. And it is best being taken up by Iran. We have seen how both sides, will not want a direct conflict, and there's no appetite for direct war. And of course, we have seen how the statement by Iran also is a stabilizing deterrence narrative. That he has stated that he has no direct appetite for war, but at the same time also he has still this capacity to sustain tolerance for greater pressure. And then further escalations will be calibrated, and there won't be any impulsive moves. And we have seen how the intervention by Qatar is another classic move to manage the tempo and thresholds, and is signaling itself as a signal translator to reduce any misinterpretation of messages by both sides. Of course, also to prevent any miscalculations. And of course, we have seen this show of force by President Trump. I foresee that a deal will be made soon. And I don't foresee any kind of erratic move by the current regime in Iran to escalate further, knowing how this would turn out. We have seen a precedent in the case of Venezuela, and this is another classic strategic move by President Trump in cornering Iran, and seeing how regional powers will respond to that in terms of also the repercussions that will follow. And I don't see any pathways or openings for the regime in Iran to continue to escalate and to have this tit-for-tat move that will escalate things further. A deal will be made soon, and how would that happen, and to what extent, and to what volumes, it remains to be seen. But for the next couple of days, unless the regime has the common sense of strategic calculations, I don't see Tehran will escalate things further. As to what has happened now in terms of the strategic blockade and containment now, and despite the efforts being shown by regional powers to soften the tempo. Pretty.
Collins, but the way Tehran has been cracking down on demonstrators and protesters, and with the death toll already in several thousands, do you really think it's going to bog down to US pressure, especially when none of the countries around Tehran are really allowing US its land or airspace for any kind of strike on Iran?
Yeah, that would not matter much. Of course, there will be some hiccups or limitations, but it won't really matter for if there's this strategic intent or calculations, all options on the table. If that is the case, to be decided by President Trump to use force. Although there might be possibilities of no support being shown by regional allies. We have seen how it has happened in Venezuela. Although this is a different ball game, still there is no way for Tehran to respond to that. There might be some pockets of resistance, some targeting platforms, but that will be limited. But we have seen how the Iranian economy remains fragile. It has little to none, regional support in that case, and we have seen also how this also surpasses the need for the current domestic volatility in terms of the treatment of the people there, but also with regards to the agreement and the negotiations on the nuclear threshold of Iran also. So I foresee that a deal will be made soon, and of course this is a different ball game for the Iranian regime, as is now dealing with President Trump's new model of policies. It's no longer under the archaic conventional approach by the Obama administration or even the Biden administration. So they are well cognizant of this fact, and I don't foresee that they will take the harder stance down the road for the next couple of days now.
Sure. All right, Collins, thanks for your comments. Requested to stay on. Now, viewers, Trump has warned the United States would respond significantly if Canada proceeds with its trade agreement with China. Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One, Trump said if Canada strikes a deal with China, the US would take substantial action. He expressed concerns that China could gain control over Canada if the deal is finalized. Trump's comments come as Canada continues its trade negotiations with China, raising tensions in the region.
If they do a deal with China, yeah, we'll do something very substantial. Because we can have a great relationship with China, President Xi, but we don't want China to take over Canada. And if they make the deal that he's looking to make, China will take over Canada. And the first thing they're going to do, end ice hockey.
All right, I request now Collins to join me back in the discussion here. Collins, what really could be on Trump's agenda against China, against Canada if it strikes a deal with China?
It's a strong message to not only Canada but other allies of the US, including European powers that have been inching closer to China now in terms of increasing their economic fallback options. The message is simple and clear that you cannot have the benefit of both sides. You cannot continue to enjoy the privileged US market access, but at the same time also to seek parallel deeper economic engagement with China. So this is not about Canada per se, it's also about supply chain alignment, bloc discipline, and that they cannot afford to simply hedge economically with China, while at the same time enjoying this security umbrella and economic umbrella with the US. So we have seen how the fear is real, where President Trump has stated that China will effectively control, will take over the economic resilience and capacity of Canada, and this will also mean greater repercussions for the US, and coupled with this already greater security presence in the Western Hemisphere, and this will make Canada even being beholden by the greater Chinese economic tools, and this will also have this greater Chinese economic footprint in the Western Hemisphere. And this is something that, of course, the US would not want, especially in the Trump administration. And the measures in place will be more than tariffs. It will be targeted tariffs, some restrictions in terms of investment, in terms of tax controls on key sectors also. But of course, we understand the position of Canada in terms of facing this dilemma of wanting greater diversified options for its economy, while also maintaining the need for maintaining this economic support with the US. But this is how Trump is forcing a reality check for both Canada and China, that geography and dependence still matter, and that of course, and under President Trump, you have to be aligned with Trump's policies and the interests of the Western Hemisphere as a whole, and of course the interests of the US most importantly.
Collins, how should Canada really prepare itself? Because if it deals with China, Trump is going to impose a tariff. If not, it loses China and imports and its relations from there. How should Canada really hold its ground?
Well, I don't see any openings for Canada now to really hold its ground. We have seen how its economic prospects have not been encouraging, and it's sheer common sense now. China is on we can see that the US still remains the ultimate economic support for Canada, and China is halfway around the world. And of course, this is a warning shot by President Trump, not only to Canada but to Europe, to different allies in the Indo-Pacific, that the era of economic neutrality between Washington and Beijing is now closing fast. There is hedging and strategic balancing, whatever you want to call it, is becoming more costly, and that strategic ambiguity in trade is also shrinking in terms of options. So this is the time that you need to be aligned with the greater need and interest, and also the concerns of Washington in terms of protecting the economic sphere of the US and hence the Western Hemisphere as a whole. And if you do not toe the line, and if you continue to seek measures or actions that will be of great risk to the concerns and security needs of the US, then you are essentially not being part of the platform to protect the interests of the West. And this is what Canada or the UK or France have been now trying to test the water in terms of how far they can go in terms of resetting ties with Beijing, at the same time also expecting similar treatments from Trump administration. So President Trump is essentially telling them that this is no longer the case, you can't do that. And of course, the vast and the future potential of the US economy and its market access are simply indisputable in terms of the economic lifeline for Canada and all this power. So I foresee that the US still remains Canada's most important economic support power, and China simply does not fit into the equation in almost all sectors in the years to come.
All right, Collins, thanks very much then for your comments and for joining us here at NewsX World. And we move on now, viewers. Precious metal prices have turned highly volatile in China and overseas, according to the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. ICBC says market uncertainty has risen sharply, driven by global interest rate expectations, a stronger US dollar, and heightened geopolitical risks. Investors have been shifting between safe haven assets and risk trades amid conflicts in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, as well as concerns over global growth. The bank urged investors to assess their risk tolerance and avoid impulsive trading, as gold and other metals see sharp price swings. Dr. Ajay Dua, who's a senior economist, now joins us from Singapore in this discussion. Dr. Dua, thanks very much for joining us. We're seeing that sharp volatility in metals trade market. What would be your advice to the investors firstly?
Thank you very much for having me in this discussion. I would go along with what the ICBC's advice to its investors is. This is not the right time to make long-term investments in any kind of commodity, howsoever fundamentally strong the basis might be. Till a few days ago, everybody was talking about gold becoming the reserve of most countries, of most federal banks, demand for silver going up because of all the work taking place around the world in data centers, GCCs, etc. And at the same time, dollar was weakening with respect to several currencies, except India. Probably we were the only one which kept it propped up, which was showing an inherent kind of an imbalance between India and its aspirations. Having said that, we saw how, as just one episode of the President of the United States appointing a likely successor to Mr. Powell, the Fed chief, it sent out such a strong signal that day, saying that there is going to be now softening of interest rates in the US.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the dollar, because of the open market operations, joint operations undertaken in the market, open market operations, what is being said between Japan and the US, the Japanese currency being demanded by the US, it propped it up, and in turn, we found the dollar weakening. So with such manipulations possible in managing the currency, and at the same time, the minor incidents or minor episodes, as I prefer to call these, are being able to affect the currencies of the world. And finally, the tensions of East Europe, that means Ukraine, continue. And the latest one, and the advice has been issued by ICBC this morning, is after what we are told that in 10 cities of Iran last night, there were explosions, massive explosions, though so far neither Israel nor the US has owned them up, which means the geopolitical uncertainty continues. And we know that what kind of uncertainty we've had for months together with President Trump's actions of even being ready to forsake NATO, which was set up at the prompting of the US for defending Europe. With such major steps being being floated around, and each one having effect and cumulatively a larger one, the advice of the bank to its investors is exercise caution, carefully, and think long. Do not be impulsive in making your investments in gold, copper, silver, those kind of precious metals, even though there are strong reasons or there were strong reasons for propping up their prices earlier.
All right. Dr. Dua, in how long do you see some kind of stability coming up in the prices of these precious metals?
I think we will have to watch each one of these the causal factors. If there is a full-fledged war between the US and Israel on one side and Iran on the other, you would see the global trade passing through the Strait of Hormuz, which is controlled by the Iranis who sit at its. You would see disruptions in trade, and you would see uncertainty, geopolitical uncertainty worsening rather than improving. This would have its own effect on the value of the dollar. It won't strengthen it, it would weaken it further. So if it weakens it further, then there would be a demand. Where do people put money? They will then go back to the bullion, the precious metals, and the demand might rise for it again. And if kinds of tariff protectionism continues of the US, which is even today, as in your discussion I heard, that President Trump has warned Prime Minister Carney that he should not go ahead with his deal with China, which again becomes a cause for concern. So I would think that in this global confusion, global protectionism strengthening, as well as the geopolitical situation not becoming stable, it would be better that the investors remain cautious and wait for a week or two before they make any commitments of long-term investments, including buying into the futures.
All right. Dr. Dua, thanks very much then for joining me and helping us with your perspective. And we move on now, viewers, to news from Thailand, where thousands of Thai voters are participating in early voting ahead of the general election scheduled for February 8. The early vote marks a significant step toward choosing the next government after a period of political instability. Prime Minister Anutin Chanvirakul called the snap election on December 12, less than 100 days into his term, following a tumultuous parliamentary session that threatened his fragile minority government with a potential no-confidence vote. The election has emerged as a three-way race, with Anutin's conservative Bhuma Jai party competing against the former ruling Pheu Thai party and the reformist People's Party. Many voters expressed hope for significant changes in government aiming to steer the country toward a better future. Let's listen in.
ความคาดหวังก็คืออยากได้ผู้นำที่สามารถพัฒนาในส่วนของชุมชนได้จริงๆนำไปสู่สังคมที่มันสามารถพัฒนาได้ไม่ใช่แค่ว่ามีแค่ policy หรือว่านโยบายที่ใช้ในการพูดเพื่อจะทำให้ตัวเองชนะเฉยๆอยากให้คำพูดกับการกระทำสามารถเป็นไปในทิศทาง
คือมาเลือกตั้งครั้งนี้ค่ะแล้วก็คาดหวังอยากให้ประเทศดีขึ้นในทางที่แบบในทางที่ดีขึ้นนะคะก็ไม่ได้แบบคาดหวังอะไรมากมายคือว่าแต่ละพรรคนโยบายก็ไม่เหมือนกันอยู่แล้วเนี่ยค่ะ
And moving on now to some technology news, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang is urging Taiwan's top chip makers to ramp up production as demand for artificial intelligence surges worldwide. Speaking in Taipei at an impromptu press conference after hosting what he called a $1 trillion dinner with key suppliers, Huang said this year will be another strong one for business. He singled out TSMC, the world's largest contract chip maker, saying NVIDIA needs a significant increase in wafer supply to meet soaring AI demand. Huang also warned of tight supplies of memory chips, calling the entire AI supply chain increasingly stretched. The visit capped a high-profile return to his birthplace, where Huang has been greeted by crowds of fans, underscoring Taiwan's central role in the global AI boom. And viewers, that's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news and updates.